Welcome in from Chicago. There's Tom in Tallahassee. I'm here, and we're doing a quick hit before I go to the airport and make my way back to Tallahassee, where, let's admit it, everybody, the news is good. We've been waiting to hear about changes that were forthcoming. They've happened. We talked yesterday, Tom. I know briefly, this is in lieu of the JCS today because it's a travel day. Really quick for those tuning in, maybe a couple different parts of video where I can, just to weigh in with Tom about the ongoing changes that we see coming and what that means potentially. And I think there is something exciting for fans because for so long this year, there's been nothing to look forward to. Week to week, the games certainly haven't been anything to look forward to beyond the fellowship of getting together with fans and friends and family, I should say. And but we kind of knew how games were going to play out. At least now, I think that's the big thing. There's a sense of maybe hope where there hasn't been. And I think that's a big deal. I know we talked some yesterday, Tom, but it's a good sign that Mike obviously recognized that, that this is untenable and something had to be done now. And a message had to be sent, hence the reason that coaches were let go in season.
Yeah, look, he read the room properly once it got to a place of, 1-5, 1-6. It took a while, but I think we felt that. But it was hard to convince the fan base at large that, us feeling that means that an action is going to happen. This would have happened no matter what at the end of the season. At least one of the coordinators, I believe, even if Florida State had, scratched together a win in the last few weeks. Like, say, North Carolina, they had won that game. I know, crazy. Or Duke. If they only had 3 or 4 wins this season, I still think there would have been significant change. But it got so bad, and I do believe that the result on Saturday night did have an impact such that you had to do it now. I think there was some reluctance to do it in season, but it makes so much sense, especially this kind of a year where you have a bye week followed by Charleston Southern, followed by a big game against Florida, granted. But this is an industry that is constantly changing, and I do believe beyond the obvious of getting blown out every week and losing 80-14 in your last 2 games, that it's real. The impact of trying to be ready to go once the Florida game is over and you have a few days to turn around for signing day, you got to be ready for that. And I think this is a signal to the fans, not only of this is not acceptable, but also a signal that we're trying to make the most of our roster overhaul that is going to happen over the next 2 months.
We did the show last week several times. I alluded to the fact that changes were coming. When I got up here, there was more that kind of talk as well, Tom. And, when we talked the other day on what amounted to the pregame show, I was telling you that my sources were saying that change was coming, and they couldn't pinpoint the day, but they felt strongly it was happening soon. Well, Obviously that's correct. I wonder where the next round of coaching announcements are going to be made in terms of how many more guys are set to go. I think the fans' reaction yesterday was one of, all right, good. That's a good start. I don't think they want that to be the finish line. And now you start looking around, you start putting together, everybody's got a list of somebody that they would like. I don't know how realistic it is unless you get inside Mike's mind to know what kinds of coordinators he wants. You're constantly trying to strike a balance between those that perhaps are elite from a game plan standpoint, a scheme standpoint, teaching it, right? And those that can actually go out and do those things well enough, but also be elite recruiters. And, if you bring in an elite recruiter at one position, can you afford to have a guy who's more along the lines of a grand, scheme guys, So I'm kind of curious to see how he cobbles this together. I believe those back channels were hit some time ago. I believe that because everybody seems to have the same 2 agents in this sport, one super agent and then an underling, and those 2 guys, there's a few others out there, but it's a very small pool of people that represent the vast majority of big-time college football coaches. So it's not hard when things are going poorly to reach out to those individuals and to say, to your agent or the agency, hey, we got a situation here. We need to bring in some guys that are either up-and-comers that we feel are sure things that deserve their shot now, are ready to roll, have proven it enough in the eyes of Mike Norvell and some others, or their names, big names. And I don't know about the big names part. I know yesterday, unfortunately, my Wi-Fi was going in and out as I was kind of trying to do the hit with you guys from the streets of Chicago outside the Art Institute. But I know Corey was talking about you got to get some big names, or at least it was mentioned that there should be some big names. I don't know, how many big names Florida State can get right now. It's a program in disarray. It is still Florida State. Assurances, like we said, are going to have to be given. But if you're a big name right now, you already have a job, and probably a pretty good one. So we'll see. I mean, maybe it's a guy who's not happy in the NFL, who's a coordinator of sorts, but not a DC or an OC, and wants to be that. Maybe wants to be a head coach and views this as the path to being a head coach. If they come in and do a great job as DC or OC at Florida State and get it turned around, yeah, maybe you can get a guy like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important that the administration backs these moves, and I think they will. This isn't for debate. I think they will. Backs these moves from a name standpoint, a salary standpoint, to signal that we are trying to make right what went wrong, and it's a layup for them to be able to do that. But you need to signal that it's important, because the grand conversation about everything, where Florida State stands as a program in the conversation, is important right now. I don't think 1-9 or 2-10 for the season radically changes Florida State's case to get out of the ACC and go to the Power 2. The brand can withstand this. It's not a good look, but it's not a brand killer. But at the same time, it would be nice for everybody involved and for the big players to see that even though Florida State has all of these projects going on and they're in the red to some degree in terms of cash on hand, that they're willing to go all in again and make right what went wrong this year. So what I'll be interested to see today, because this video will be posted well before Mike Norvell speaks at 11:30. So some of this information is going to be revised with how Mike Norvell speaks today. When he is asked the question of, what kind of coach do you want to bring in? Do you have an idea? I think that would be a good question too. Do you have an idea of who you want to bring in here for at least an interview? Because I agree with you. These back channels have been hit before, and we know the answer is he already has put out feelers. But will he say on the record? That's the important thing. Will he say on the record, oh, I've got a pretty good idea of what I want here, or I know that I want this coach to be X, Y, and Z, and here are my priorities for the next hire. These comments from Mike are going to be very important.
That's the latter is what's going to happen, Tom. He's not. He's got to be careful. I mean, these other guys might have jobs right now,
right?
And I think, in fact, they probably do. So I think he's got to be careful about that and how he ends up talking about that. I also think that today will be a day where it will have a sound of regret as well as determination. He's got to strike a balance today.
Somber to start, right?
Yeah, I think it's somber. Yeah. I really believe it's somber, because I think Mike feels bad. Mike is going to feel like he cost these guys their job. And I don't think it's a vindictive release of coaches. I think it's this is too screwed up. You guys understand it. I mean, those guys are going to be, many of those guys anyhow, I think are pretty indebted to Mike. Mike got them rich beyond their wildest dreams. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude to people, but there are guys on the staff that would have never seen the kind of money that Mike's made them by getting those extensions and getting them the jobs here to begin with. I'm not saying they're all talentless or that they wouldn't have been able to move up in the coaching world. It's just that at a place like Florida State, I don't think the world was racing out to bring in Adam Fuller. So, honestly, that guy's going to be okay. He'll land on his feet. He's made a lot of money here. He'll get another job somewhere. But I think Mike will feel like he cost Adam his job, or that he cost Alex his job. I don't know if that's fair or not, but I think a head coach sometimes has to certainly take on that responsibility, and he'll feel that way. So there'll be an air of somberness. Like, I hate to see it. Sometimes things go wrong. These are good coaches. I'm sure they're going to get good jobs, like that kind of a thing. I think that's what he's going to say. And then in terms of turning the corner from that messaging, you do have to deliver a message to the fan that you're strong, your fans, that you're strong, that you're still locked in, and that you understand there's a lot of work to be done. And that while you're sorry to see these guys leave, there's more work to be done where that goes, where that applies with coaches. I think he may allude to some of that. And then I think he'll talk a little bit about, the the timeline for when they're going to announce that guys are hired.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see because recruits are going to be listening for that. Obviously, we're doing a great job here at warchant.com. Our own Matt Lasser he's texting recruits. He's got a good thread going of recruit reactions to the firings and the impacts that can be felt. And, let's just not beat around the bush on that one. It's the Alex Atkins firing that is the video that people will watch, or the article that people are going to read, because Florida State had yeses from significant players at offensive line, and they were holding with a month to go until the early signing period. The defensive side, take or leave. The receiver position, no. I mean, you had studs a month ago, and you still are in on some 4-star players, but that's not something that you have to spend a whole lot of time. The questions about that will be, can you go poach some of those kids that were interested in Mike and Florida State a month ago and get them back? That's going to be the question there. So the recruits are going to be watching this in some form, whether it's the entire press conference. I doubt it. 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds don't have that long of an attention span, and Mike tends to get long-winded in these situations. But they're going to read the bullet points. If they're interested in Florida State, their parents are, they are. So, yes, it's not just about striking a balance for the fan base or striking a balance so that national, regional, and local media will cover this event well. It's also to make sure that any potential transfers, that any potential targets on the high school trail, their coaches on the high school trail hear the message clearly. Because let's say I'm a coach in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, anywhere in the middle of the state. I now know that Billy Napier is the guy I'm going to be working with over the next year or two because Florida doubled down. Mario Cristobal certainly is going to be there. And now I know that Mike Norvell is going to continue to be the coach that I deal with for the next year or two. So very important for a lot of different parties for Mike Norvell to strike the right balance today.
Do you think post his press conference we get something from Alfred today? A release of any kind?
I was wondering if he wouldn't send a release last night, because sometimes they'll allow the first party, the most appropriate party to speak. And it's more appropriate that in that situation, Mike Norvell, had a long graph and maybe the only one. Sometimes the athletic director will chime in at the end of a release like that saying, support. Part of me wonders why he wouldn't just do 10, 15 minutes before the 11:30 presser and to set the tone, because then you can take a little bit of heat off the coach. This is something that Stan Wilcox did not do the night of the Clemson game 10 years ago. And that pissed me off to no end. One of my first early rants in Jeff Cameron Show history was, this is basic stuff. Jimbo had to stand up there and answer for interim President Garnett Stokes for the Jameis Winston suspension. And Stan is standing in the room. Stan, take 3 questions and say, Coach is only going to talk about the game tonight. What a win for Sean McGuire and for our football program. But Jimbo had to answer for a ruling that he wanted nothing to do with. So
no, he was livid about it, right?
Yes, and that was weak. Part of me wonders if it wouldn't be good for Alford to either release a statement before 11:30 or just say, hey, get there 5 minutes early. I'm going to take a couple questions, and then obviously Coach can set the agenda for what's next for the football program. We'll see.
Yeah, I wonder, because I want him to be able to send a message to everybody that even though it's obvious to you and me that when a head coach announces the firing of 3 staff members, especially an OC and a DC, let's just start there, it clearly means he's going to be here. Like, he doesn't get the right to do that if they're firing him. But, you would like affirmation from the athletic director to be able to kind of follow up on that and say, we believe in Mike. We think that obviously this season's unacceptable. We know a lot of fans are hurting right now. This is not Florida State standard, and Mike knows that. We've had a good talk with Mike, and Mike is determined to get this back to where we were just a year ago. And we believe he is the right guy. We believe in who he is. We believe the kind of person that he is. We really love that he loves this institution and that he has the work ethic and knowledge necessary to succeed here. We've seen it firsthand. We've seen him succeed here. So we're believers in Mike, and that's why we're taking the steps today to announce some of these changes, and we're going to let Mike talk now. But we believe in Mike Norvell, something akin to that.
Yes, and maybe they're drafting that release right now because he doesn't want to take the podium because it's Mike's forum. Like there are a lot of ways you could handle this. That just, here's a PR 101 tactic, and we're going to open this firm at some point because we would make a lot of money on this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all right if Michael Alford, if you stand at the podium and you don't make an opening statement, and there are questions. What are the first questions that are going to be asked? First one is what you just said. Do you believe in Mike? Does Mike stand? You know, is he on firm ground here? What is the confidence level of the athletic department in Mike Norvell? Okay, you can nip that in the bud with a statement, with a release. The next question would be, what resources are you willing to part with, and what kind of budget is here and available to Mike Norvell for these coaching changes? But then also, we live in an era of unlimited coaches potentially that can help you on the sideline. So what are you willing to deploy to help right this particular situation? And again, that's such an easy one that you could put it in a release or make it an opening statement and say, we will spare no expense to make sure that this football program returns to the proper standard. Boom, you just had a really good day. So we'll see if he does something along those lines.
Yeah, well, we wanted to weigh in this morning before, like I said, I head over to the airport and get going. But I do think there will be a chance, Tom, after this press conference later today, where we get a sense of what Mike has to say, where maybe I'll be able to get together with you again, hopefully so, and we can put something else here on the feed, both the YouTube channel and the JCS feed, and maybe get a response to what Mike had to say. You know how traveling goes, guys. But I'm going to try to do that. We're flying into Atlanta, but there should be an opportunity. But we figured we start the day with this, given the big news, and given the fact that changes are coming to Florida State. It's a bye week, so that you were just basically 2 weeks off, Tom. You had it. We all knew something had to happen.
Yeah. Hey man, I'm not gonna. It's just low hanging fruit. You have to. I mean, yeah. We saw the chat. We saw the chat. The people were like, "For the love of God, I don't want to talk about third down efficiency. Can we talk about the future?" And you got to give them a chance to do that.
Well, and that Notre Dame game. I mean, it was empty against Carolina. I think again, people felt powerless, felt really frustrated. You come up here to watch a game, and your team's not in the fight. They're just not in the fight. And Florida State should never not be in the fight. You're going to have games that don't go your way. Sometimes things avalanche, turn the ball over a bunch of times. You have a tough day at the office. You're left lamenting a singular game, but not the status of a program. When we walk out of that stadium and when you're walking around and you know that your team didn't belong on the same field as the other team, well, that's not Florida State. That's never Florida State, no matter who you're playing. And unfortunately for Mike, there's been too many of those kinds of games. I know we like to write off the Georgia game from a year ago, but in light of what's happened this year, I don't know that you can. So there have been too many moments where you were not competitive against the upper echelon of college football, like you didn't look like you deserved to be there. And that is not a good look.
Yeah, well, I mean, just put it simply, in your last 30 games, you're 20-10. And you started that 30-game run with 19 wins in a row. Right. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It hurts your feelings. That'll hurt your feelings. Good talking to you, brother. We'll do some more here on the JCS and on Warchant TV. Of course, keep it with Warchant all day long. They'll be doing all kinds of the groundwork back home while we all travel, me, Ira, and Aslan. And I know Corey's around to do some stuff too. So keep us in the loop, brother.
Have a good day up there, man.
Take care, man.